Trends are something that video games rely on because, well, they're trendy, and why wouldn't they? But some of them become annoying after the first 50 games that use them. So these are the top 7 gaming trends that need to stop. Things that developers put in their video games, even though we ask them not to, we hope they'll stop, but that's sort of what they do now. It's a sign of the times, it's in the Zeitgeist, if you will, and there's nobody to call. Trends that may not be, well, all that great. Much like the notch that you find in some phones, which is there because the iPhone did it once and because it's a trendsetter, everybody's gonna copy it instead of having some integrity and self-consciousness. But anyway, let's get back to video games. So that being said, let's get it started with number 7, Steam Direct. Now, the idea that anybody that can afford $100 can publish a game on Steam is wonderful. It's absolutely amazing. It is a sign that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you're a game developer, if you have the passion, and if you actually made something, and you can find somebody to loan you $100, you can have your game on Steam. That is amazing, and it should stop really soon because there's been 8,000 games released on Steam this year, and the year is not over yet, and a lot of them are, well, they're not all that great. I don't want to say that maybe not all games should be on Steam, that maybe some developers should think that I'm gonna go to itch.io maybe for my first thing, and then when I make something a bit better, I'm gonna put it on Steam. It's just an idea that maybe a bit more curation should be involved. Like, I know that Steam Greenlight wasn't the greatest thing ever, but at least there was some oversight there from the community, so they got to decide when they weren't being bought and paid and bots and okay, so that was a terrible system as well. But on the bright side, it did get some games on Steam that would have not been on Steam otherwise because Valve doesn't have time to look all of them over, and there was still that big dam in front of the flood so that when you look at new releases you won't get that hentai game with the horse. And probably 4 sequels to it by now. So what I'm saying is maybe find a way to tone it down just a little bit. A tiny bit. Number 6. Triple and quadruple dipping. Double dipping in video games in terms of, well, getting money from people is a common occurrence. Games are expensive now. It's not cheap to run a studio, to still have the people there working after the studio finishes the game, otherwise they get fired. And well, okay, a bunch of them are still getting fired once a project is done because some companies are just terrible and very big and hoard all the money. But when you triple and quadruple dip, it tends to be a bit murky. It's a bit like you really want to just milk your audience for money. And when I say triple and quadruple, I mean that you pay for the game, you pay for DLC, pay for cosmetics, you maybe even pay a monthly fee. You pay for keys to open loot crates, you pay for extra characters that should have been in there by default, you pay for maps. Okay, this is septuple dipping by now, but you get the idea. We were at the point where they're selling cheats. We've been at the point where Ubisoft has been selling cheats to Assassin's Creed for whenever 3 came out, or 4. You want to buy some resources to upgrade your ship that takes a bajillion years to upgrade because the progression system is kind of slow. Well, you can do it. You just have to buy the hell. They did it with the last one, with Origin Sea, Odyssey. They look like the same game, so I'm not really sure which is which. They made the progression worse just so they can sell faster experience in a single player game that's gonna have a lot of DLC, which is still maybe not as worse as when an MMO does it. It still has a monthly fee and expansions and $50 ponies. Now sure, that would mean that there will be a drop off in profit for video games if that happens, but maybe it's okay for you CEO to not have 2 gold-plated jets. I think people really underestimate how much money executives make. We're talking multiple millions, tens of millions of dollars a year. That Soderlund guy that left EA, he was making bank, and I mean, oh boy, he made almost $50 million in a year. Well, he did have stock options, because you do that once you're a CEO, once you're the big shot in the company. You could give stock options to the little people too. The people that test games, that program them, that do the things that make the games. Just saying, it's an idea. Number 5, Arkham style combat. I hate it. It's so joyless. It's so automatic. It's so boring. It was a novelty once when Arkham Asylum did it, and then everybody started doing it. It was even in the Shadow of Mordor, which I know there's a bit of a controversy with it, looking a lot like it reused animations from Assassin's Creed, but it used the combat from Arkham Asylum, which made it painfully boring to play. I mean, the Nemesis system was amazing, but the game itself, Jesus, it was so boring. I just wished it would end, and I just gave up playing it, even though the Nemesis system was interesting. And the reason why it's boring is that you don't really do much in it. You react, you dance revolution your way through a whole pile of enemies, and don't really have much to do, really. And they can't really hurt you once you start just pressing jump, or dodge, because the jump and the dodge button are usually the same button, because why would you have different buttons for dodge and jump? It's not like this game is about freedom of choice, is it? No. And since I'm on this subject, can we just remove the dodge roll from video games for a while, like 2-3 years? That should be enough for people to remember the finer parts of video game action combat, where there was no dodge roll, where you had to parry blows and actually could parry blows and dodge by moving your character without a leap that makes them partially invincible. Like Jedi Knight had. Yeah. Or even Severance did have dodge roll for one character. The rest of them were sacks of meat with about as much dexterity as me, so maybe better combat for a while. Number 4, always online single player. You know what happens when a single player game is only playable online? People can play it, that's what happens. It happened with, everything. SimCity, Diablo 3 at release, every Ubisoft game that used that DRM and was started by mistake in online mode, which was still single player, it wasn't online. It's kind of annoying to have a ping in a single player game, isn't it? I know why it's there, it's for DRM, it's so you can make sure people aren't pirating it. Yeah, okay, good, works, super. You're also charging $15 for the Necromancer, so I think you're okay with money. Actually, people would probably mod the Necromancer in if they didn't have the limitation of playing only online. And it annoys me in some games that I like as well. In Path of Exile, I would like it for it to be offline as well, because it would be nice to cheat back some of the experience I keep losing whenever I run into a boss from Ikaruga. Playing as a glass cannon Frosteress is not easy. Also because the minions keep running away with you instead of fighting. So online single player, maybe tone it down a peg. For a year or two, maybe something nice will happen, we'll see. Number 3, crunch. I think we've covered this plenty of times in different shows, but crunch, not the best idea possible. Crunch is when developers will work day and night, literally, not figuratively. They will work all day. They will work at night as well. They will sleep under their desk for 3, maybe 4 hours if they're lucky, and then go back to work. And at the end, they will be really extremely tired, burned out, probably have major health issues, mental issues, and then probably be canned because, hey, the project's over, we're gonna buy 5 gold-plated jets, yeah, we don't need you anymore. Crunch isn't good. Yeah, I know, games are gonna take longer to make, they will cost more to make because you're gonna have to pay people, well, you're gonna have to pay them for the time they would have spent on crunching the game as well, but this time you won't have the excuse of, oh, they're working overtime of their own volition, so it's an no-pay situation. No, you pay them. Just imagine it, a future where a game dev will no longer be burned out by the time they're 25. Amazing. Number 2, no dedicated servers. There aren't many games that still have dedicated servers out there. It's a thing that the gaming industry sort of frowns upon these days, and then we end up in situations like the one with the Lawbreakers, where the game had to be shut down even though it was an online only multiplayer shooter, and because people were constantly giving him grief, Cliffy B announced that he's gonna give up on games forever. But here's an idea, and I don't want to sound like I'm overstepping my limitations here, but maybe, just maybe, people would not be cranky about their multiplayer shooter if they could still play it with servers that they could host. I know it's a wild theory, but the demo version of Unreal Tournament that was released 19 years ago still has people playing it online because people are hosting servers for it. This is something they could do with technology from the 1980s, but somehow it's impossible to do it with technology that we have today. Scratch that. It's impossible to do it with the publishers we have today, because I don't think it was Bosky's idea to insist on not having dedicated servers, because if it was, oh boy, Cliffy B is a bit of a whatchamacallit. Starts with Jack, ends with a donkey. Anyway, dedicated servers are a good thing for multiplayer games, because without them they could die, unless they're Fortnite, and we shall go on and on and on and on until something else shows up. And number one is treating the camera as a camera. There are a lot of people in the video game industry that really wanted to make movies but weren't really up to stuff. Then they decided, okay, I'm gonna ruin games instead. I'm gonna make games instead. Yeah, that's the one. I'm gonna make games instead of movies, because games allow me to have that artistic creativity that a movie cannot give me. And most importantly, I can make everyone's life, everyone's experience who plays these games, any games, a living hell, because I will transform the camera of the video game, an entity that is supposed to be you, the human with human eyes, into a camera, a really crappy camera, and I mean super bad. The kind of cameras made before neutral density filters, before polarization filters, before the ability to adjust aperture, exposure, the ISO. Cameras fitted with wrong lenses, with fogged up lenses even. Cameras that have not been treated well. That's how the in-game camera is treated by default in engines like Unreal, which is the basis for a lot of video games, and a lot of video games that don't even use that. You've got lens flares every 5 seconds, you've got chromatic aberrations every 2 seconds, you've got really bad high dynamic range in quotation marks effects where the image is incredibly bright, even in places it's not supposed to, just because you're in a region that's like 5% darker than the outside. And this could all be fixed by ray tracing, which I've seen the benchmarks. It's not going to happen in the next 2-3 years. It's not pretty, but once it does, I really hope people just kind of forget about the time they actively tried to blind people just for wanting to play some games. And that's it for the top 7 gaming trends that need to stop. I'd like to give a special mention to the indie aesthetic. We know you like pixel art, but yours may not be all that great, and honestly we're kind of sick of the style. You've got a lot of options, a lot of asset stores out there, a lot of artists that will work for really cheap. So maybe, just maybe, try something different. Goodbye.